Welcome to Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. Each week we bring you insights from the playmakers, deal makers, and rule makers in the world of sports. I'll give you my take on some of the items of the week using my 30 years of experience doing deals for teams, leagues, and players in the $750 billion business of sports. Plus, we'll talk with a central figure in the sports world. The views expressed in this podcast are my own and do not represent the views of Reuters. Let's get started. Big news week as always. NBA, NHL off for the summer, but not too many other people are. Major League Baseball trading deadline around the All-Star break. Golf's next major will start soon. Last one over with Jordan Spieth. Tennis, U.S. Open, we're looking forward to it. Football camp's opening, so it is an intersection with a lot of different sports. Amy Tenery, digital editor, reporter for Reuters, with us as always. Amy, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully. We got a lot of stuff going on today, especially from the NFL perspective. You know, NFL training camps opening, and just on the heels of a major study talking about potentially 99% of the brain donated to science may have some form of CTE, which may be a seminal report that may define how studies are done in the future. What's your take on all of this and how it impacts the business?
Well, I mean, it's a highly credible study. I mean, to be fair, it was a look at brains that were voluntarily handed over by the players themselves, you know, before they passed, or their families. In a lot of cases, the reason they would want to donate those brains is because the individual may have been showing signs of CTE prior to their death. So irritability, anxiety, memory loss. So in a lot of ways, it's sort of confirming that if you have signs of CTE, you probably had it. That said, it's pretty staggering. The number is pretty staggering and pretty sobering. And it really, I think, is kind of the culmination of a lot of other theories in the past about the link between CTE and the NFL. That said, you know, we've heard time and time again, oh, the NFL really needs to do something about concussions. They need to, you know, they stopped allowing head-to-head tackles, you know, helmet-on-helmet interaction. But popularity doesn't seem to have slowed down that much. I know ratings were down a little bit last season, but a lot of that is attributable to the election. My question for you, this was absolutely blowing up my social media feed. Do you think that this has gotten enough attention from people that this could be a turning point for the NFL? And if so, what do they need to do to right the ship here? What do they need to do to actually, stop this horrible pattern with their players and re-earn the trust of the public?
Well, there's an issue here of perception versus reality. The NFL has to look like and actually act one step ahead of the science. Nobody's saying they're out ahead of any scientific prevention. It is an evolving disease and it's an evolving science. They're spending a lot of money on it from that perspective. But full disclosure, as you know, I'm on the board of Pop Warner, and one of the things we talk about in all of our meetings is the decreasing popularity of football, the worried parents who don't want to have their kids be in it, some of the glorified hits that have now affected all of us and what happens with the future of football, and also the insurance premiums and the liability, which is a very important issue.
Yeah, and I have to wonder, you know, because of salary caps in the NFL, these athletes compared to other professional athletes are among the lowest paid, if you can believe that. I mean, I know they still get paid millions upon millions of dollars, but you compare their salaries to something like baseball players or basketball players. If I'm, somebody who is gifted athletically and I'm looking at my future, and I'm looking at the kind of damage that football would do to my body compared to one of these other marquee sports, I don't see the incentive to try to go in that route. So I think it will be interesting to see how, as you said, they can potentially allay the fears of parents and kids who are looking to get into football.
Listen, this is a very long book. We've only begun the chapters, and the real key now is not what's been done, but how do people feel and intent to actually solve the problem, reduce the liability, get the insurance companies involved, et cetera, et cetera. It is a big issue, and this new study will shine another spotlight on it, to be sure. Let's shine a spotlight on something else. You know, it used to be the reselling ticket market was one of those things. You whispered for a ticket, on the sidewalk across the street and hope the police didn't deal with it. It's called scalping. Then it was called ticket reselling. Now, for the first time in history, StubHub has reached a deal with all 30 clubs in Major League Baseball, not just to resell the inventory, but actually to get into their marketing of tickets themselves. And it's a really good example of how the company is creating a partnership with Major League Baseball and other sports to take unused inventory and resell it. Again, the argument is convenience for the fans because it's easy for them to get these tickets, and arguably convenience for the teams because they get to sell what would be otherwise unused season tickets. What's your take on all this?
So not to turn it back on you, but I, as a fan, have a few questions. I mean, obviously, I understand why StubHub would want to make this deal. They're the go-to place now for reselling tickets. I have to wonder, though, I mean, as a fan, it would frustrate me to only have one venue to actually buy and sell tickets. It certainly incentivizes StubHub potentially to add on extra fees because they know people can't go elsewhere. But I also wonder, how is this going to be regulated? There's lots of other venues where these tickets can get sold. How is this actually enforceable?
Well, the issue, I think, is when they look at, when you do a little bit of research on it, they argue that it's free market in the sense that the seller is the one that sets the price. And the buyer then can sell, and the seller, again, can reset the price. It's a gamble on how much the tickets are worth, how far in advance of the game. So, it legitimizes something that years ago people found illegal. But I think the market sets it as long as the conduit is fully transparent about what is being sold and what is being bought, and guarantee you that especially in these early years, there will be a highly regulated, highly watched industry because this is something new for the teams. They want to make sure they get their money, but most important, as you as a fan would attest, they don't want to alienate their fans because that is a big deal. So look for the first step of this in a long down the road process as we go forward. The other thing I wanted to deal with today would be foundations, how they deal with players, the whole notion of players making so much money and learning the hard way to manage their money. Jake Peavy, the Cy Young winner years ago, former MLB pitcher, as you know, lost $15 million in a Ponzi-like scheme where he was bilked out of the money through shady investors. He's partnered with financial education digital titan EverFi to create financial education courses, not just for players, but for kids as well. It's another example of a partnership between a sports standout, education, and communities. And we talk about philanthropy and we talk about charity, but this is mixing charity and financial well-being and knowledge for all of the athletes that get bilked out of dollars, but also all of the kids who want to learn how to manage their money. Again, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this to me makes a lot of sense. I know that his is an extreme example. I don't think you have to get caught up in a Ponzi scheme to mismanage your money. I think it is a pretty clear pitfall for anybody who is suddenly accumulating a great deal of wealth. And I have to wonder how common this is, that you're somebody who comes into a major contract and all of a sudden you don't know how to manage your money. Do you as a financial expert and as a sports marketing expert, do you see this a lot? Do you think this is a prevalent issue among players? And do you think maybe beyond just helping youth, do you think this should be a broader program, maybe even to help current players?
Absolutely. And I think the whole theme of the interview we're going to get into in a minute, and the answer to your question, is that there is shared responsibility for this. We have someone who is a real honor to be interviewed. Marcus Lattimore was born in South Carolina. He was Mr. Football in South Carolina, and in the late 2000s, he was the best player and best running back at the University of South Carolina for years. You may remember he played college football at the University of South Carolina, drafted by the 49ers in the 4th round after he blew out his knee in a horrendous injury. So the theme of self-help, getting athletes to help, getting insurance companies to help, you can't do better than hear from Marcus Latimer. Rick Horrow here at the Sloan MIT conference, and this is normally reserved, and I mean this respectfully, I really do, as a sports lawyer, does a Harvard thing. This is usually the 2-day Geek Fest. Today, it might be, but that's not what you're going to hear for the next 15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. I will tell you that this is all about business, and it's all about how you deal with business issues. And one of the fundamental things about it is how you protect the important component. We're all here, and everybody's talking about getting a job or doing a job, but people wouldn't be here but for the first-class athletes who perform at a level beyond anybody else. Marcus Lattimore, how are you, man?
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me have you. And the other thing about this, which is important, is, I don't know if we can see it, but this is Marcus Lattimore's picture. He was drafted in the 4th round by the Niners. We'll go through that story. Look at him today. Look at this. That's a businessman. That is a businessman. I don't know about that. I don't know about that picture. That's a football drafted, ready to go picture. You're smiling.
That's a guy who, his whole life, he wanted to be in the NFL, and he had to put on this certain persona.
Yeah.
All right. That this is how you look in the NFL, and that guy, he's long gone.
He's long gone.
He's long gone.
You can tell he's long gone because that guy. And the splendor of that guy, that's two different things, ladies and gentlemen. It looks like Gamecock. He is a Gamecock. So Burns High, Duncan, South Carolina, obviously the best football player at the time coming out of South Carolina, ESPN's National High School Football Player of the Year. You've seen these stats for so long, 2008, ready to be drafted in the 1st round. Why don't you tell the story, then what happened?
Yeah. So my whole life, I worked for that moment. My junior year, I have an opportunity to go play for the University of South Carolina. My last year, I know it's my last year, and I'm destined for greatness. I have a lot of great people in my circle.
And that's not arrogant, that's confidence.
That's just confidence. Yeah. And that's just everything that I put into it because I knew I worked hard and I was able to come back from that first knee injury. And then the 9th game of the year rolls around, October 27, 2012. We're playing Tennessee, one of our rivals in the SEC, and I dislocate my right knee, tear every ligament, my calf muscle, my hamstring. I have nerve damage. I'm rushed to the hospital because there's a possibility I might lose my leg. Now, at that point in my life, football was irrelevant. Yeah. I just wanted to walk again. I just wanted to run again. And those were the thoughts that went through my mind. And when you go through adversity like that, when you go through an injury like that, it changes your perspective on the way you see things, on the way you see life.
How quickly did it change your perspective? You're sitting there on the field, you're going to the hospital, and obviously you think about your own self-preservation. When does the reality of earning power, family money, building houses, issues about that, when does that all kick in?
When I couldn't feel my leg. I couldn't feel my leg from the knee down, and I'm, rushing to get to the hospital that's about 5 miles away, and my family's a little distraught, and the coaches are distraught, and my teammates come visit me after the game. Luckily, we still win the game. My teammates come visit me after the game, and I'm, pretty much just sitting in there, and I'm going to have a blank stare on my face because I really didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to walk again. That's all I could ever think about. And in that moment, football, like I said, it was irrelevant. And the only way I was able to get through that was because of my faith and also because of the people who invested in me a long time ago and the people who mean so much to me, who didn't want to see me give up. Those kids who were looking at me in South Carolina, they didn't want to see me give up. So I gave it one more shot.
Well, but also, you left out a piece, which is you're bright, intelligent, entrepreneurial, very self-confident. I don't know if you were always that way, but you had the assets to persevere.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's because of, for one, my education. Yeah. And for two, a lot of guys from small rural towns, like I'm from, they don't receive the financial literacy. They don't receive the certain type of etiquettes that I received because I had people in my life who were in good positions. Some guys who worked in corporate America that I looked up to, and I was able to shadow them, and I was able to see how you conduct yourself on a day-to-day basis, and how you make it in this world. And I knew if football didn't work out, I'd still have an opportunity to be successful.
So how did you then take the next step of giving back, life after football, monetizing, creating a stable economic environment for your family? That's what this is all about.
Absolutely, and I was able to do that. Financially, I was in a good place because I received a signing bonus from the NFL, from the 49ers. I received 2 years worth of salary. So when I walked away from the game, I was in a good position, but I knew I had to go back and get my degree. And I got my degree in public health. And during that transition, I really, seen how many people gravitated towards me and how many people were inspired by my story.
Interesting.
And because they were inspired by my story, I received a lot of speaking inquiries. So I decided to start a business. And that business is speaking engagements, it's appearances, it's football camps, it's everything that I do, but it's also making a difference in kids' lives.
But there's also a survivalist message to it. I mean, you've got a curriculum that is a special curriculum, but it's based on the personal history and the success and overcoming of Marcus Lattimore.
Right. Absolutely. And, the biggest thing that I want these kids to realize is that it may not happen for you. If it doesn't happen, you have a plan B. We're speaking of the NFL, speaking of the NBA, MLB, whatever you want to pursue in your life, you can do that. And football is that engine. That sport provides the hope, but the education secures that hope. And my foundation, we educate student athletes for life after sports. And that's what it's all about. At best, you'll play the game till you're 30 years old. You have 50 more years to live. What are you going to do?
And that percentage that plays the game until they're 30 years old is microscopic.
Very
what do you
small.
do if you have a magic wand to change the economic system? The insurance issues, the transition issues, the education issues.
Right.
And the NFL has certain ways to do things and certain ways they don't. So how do we change the system?
That's a complicated question, but it's a great question.
And we have some time.
And it's something, it's an issue that everybody needs to be aware of. And, when it comes to a guy, for instance, we just have to educate them on every single aspect of it. I mean, when there's a high-profile athlete who's coming out of college and he's presented with an insurance form,
right,
or something that ensures that he'll be financially secure, make sure he's informed, make sure he's educated on what he's signing. And right now, that's not the case because guys can't have legal representation.
Right.
And when you look at the insurance and the NFL and all the things, the facets that come through it, it boils down to one thing. It's education. It's education. And the NFL PA, I think, is doing a great job with our rookies who come into the league. I think more colleges are investing a lot more into beyond sports. For example, Oregon State has a program who teaches every single guy that comes on the football team financial literacy and making sure they're prepared. So, I mean, we're going in the right direction, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Why is it a dirty little secret that not too many people talk openly about insurance premiums and boosters or athletic programs actually funding insurance premiums, because it is legal under NCAA rules? And why not, for people who were playing at your college level, make everybody aware of what is available and make the risk fall on the people that ought to fall on, not you?
Yeah, it's an issue that a lot of people don't want to talk about because there's money involved. there's finances involved.
Right.
And when we talk about money, that brings up a lot of problems. And, when you look at that scope of the guys who are funding it and the insurance premiums and everything that comes in between that, I believe there should be a mandated protocol where every single kid who comes into your university or your college, they have an opportunity to learn this information and see the resources that they have available. Because there's money involved, because they only want to select those top tier, those few guys, it'll stay a secret until light is brought upon it.
And the secret implies that it's a bad thing. We're all, just to be clear, it's a easy financial transaction that's done all the time. It's just a question of who delivers the money to the athletic department, who then makes the decisions. Duke, for example, pays for those insurance programs as part of a whole deal during a one and done in basketball side. So 2 and done, 3 and done, the key for NFL is you're going to play your senior year. NBA, 1 and done or not. Obviously, all of those issues have to be collectively bargained with the union, but this whole idea of insurance premiums and assessing the risk certainly could make things a lot easier when somebody makes a decision to go pro or not after 2 years, 3 years, in the NBA after 1 year, don't you think?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, when you're in the NCAA, I mean, the rule right now is you have to stay 3 years.
Yeah.
And just like you said, in the NBA, it's 1 year. But just making these guys aware of what's going on. I mean, just so they know. I mean, half the guys really don't know what's going on.
No, not half, more.
More.
Yeah.
More than half don't know the whole situation. And how we fix that, we have to educate them. Because, as you said, it's not, all of this is compliant.
5 years from now, what's next for Marcus Lattimore?
Great question. I still see myself in athletics. I love the game of football. I love sports in general. Maybe I'll be somewhere in athletic administration. But what I've learned from life, what I've learned about life, is that you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You can plan, you can prepare, you can be organized, and you can hope for the best. And that's what I'll do. I want to continue my career in athletics in some capacity. I love coaching. I love being around kids, and I love educating kids on issues that you bring to life. So that's the plan. I don't know where they'll take me, but all I know is that whatever happens, I'll be prepared for it because I've seen it all.
Yeah. And I will tell you this, you'd have been a hell of a running back in the pros, but you're even a better human being with more to offer off the field. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. The producer of the show, Alex Cohen. Associate producer, Bethel Habte. Assistance provided by Tanner Simpkins and Carla Swadek. And the executive editor of Reuters Digital, Dan Colarusso.